Hi, I'm Simon Wickenden,
Hi, and I'm Martin Guthrie.
and we're back again in our session of enablement videos around Oracle licensing.
So this is the third position.
Third one. And today it's metric.
Metric. Okay, so we're going to define how you actually license a product.
It's the unit of measure that you
Okay.
buy the license by.
Okay, so what are the options?
So, weirdly, I'm not going to list them all. I'm going to talk about some of the main ones.
Okay.
So let's hit straight at that. I think the main two that most people have come across are processor and named user plus.
Is that also what I hear called NUPS?
NUPS.
Okay.
NUPS, for people that aren't particularly Oracle specific, are very similar in definition to CALs for Microsoft, if you're
Okay,
from a
that
more
makes sense.
Microsoft background. So let's talk about processor. Processor sounds like it should be easy. Processor sounds like it should be about a processor.
So physical socket maybe? No?
You'd hope, wouldn't you? But no, in Oracle world, the definition of processor changes. So in the last episode, we talked about additions. So standard addition, the metric is a processor is a socket.
Okay.
With enterprise addition, the metric for that, for a processor, is an Oracle factored core.
So tell me more.
Factored core. Oracle publish a core factor license table.
I've seen that's on the internet. It's publicly available.
It's publicly available on the internet. Each type of processor has a different core factor. So a Xeon, for instance, has a core factor of 0.5, which means you need a license for every two processors, or every two cores.
Okay, and I guess that's rounded up because you wouldn't want to license 3 cores.
Yeah, so basically you have to have enough to cover what you've got to the nearest whole number.
Okay. So Xeon, so 2 cores equals 1 license because it's half a core a license is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
The next metric I think we should talk about is named user plus. Named user plus is slightly more complicated to explain because it's based on a named user. But a named user isn't necessarily a person.
So it's not somebody registered to use that software.
It's somebody registered to use that software or something that you may want to use that software. For instance, if you wanted to display a stream of data on a computer without any human interaction, that computer would be a named user under Oracle's licensing rules.
Okay.
And again, talking about how the metric works with additions, different additions have a different minimum number of named users. So it's still tied to the processor to a degree.
Okay, so as an example, if I wanted to buy Enterprise Edition, what's the minimum number of users I need to use?
Weirdly, it depends on the product, but if we talk database, because that's the common one, the number you'd use as a minimum is 25 per licensable core. So if it was a Xeon, every 2 cores would need 25 users as a minimum.
But what happens if I only had 20 users?
You have to buy the minimum for that hardware that you're deploying on.
Okay, so what you're saying there is it's either minimum number of users, or if I'm using, say, 4 cores, I have to license 25 and 25 users, so 50 named users.
Absolutely.
Whichever's the lowest.
Absolutely. It's ever the highest, I'm
Highest, of
afraid.
course.
Ever's the highest. There's plenty of other metrics. In the application space, you often see application users as a metric. Some of the other application modules will have a record count as a metric. You often see things like millions of dollars of revenue as a metric on certain applications. So there's a whole range. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I am going to mention is where you can find all these metrics.
But first of all, I've got a question because I'm intrigued. So let's look at database.
Yeah.
So we talked about Enterprise Edition database. You said has 25 named users.
Yep.
Minimum. Okay. So what happens if I had a customer who had shift workers? So they did 3 8-hour shifts. They had 20 users in the morning, 20 users in the afternoon, and then 20 users in the evening. would they only need 20 named users?
Nope, 60. Every single user would need a license, assuming that that's enough licenses for the hardware. Actually, that's a good area to talk about there, because you can move the licenses around when it's named users, as long as enough licenses to cover all the hardware estate is there. But we'll discuss that in more detail in the virtualization one.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you.
I was just going to launch into talking about the LDR.
LDR?
LDR is a document that Oracle published called License Definition and Rules. If your customer is buying through an ULSA or an OMA, they will need to sign an LDR, because definitions of the metrics have changed over the years.
And also in OMAs, they are, I guess, agreements that the customer will already
They're
have
the
in
Oracle
place.
agreements, yeah. So that's an Oracle Master Agreement, and ULSA is an older version of that.
Okay.
The LDR has all the definitions in. There are, again, hundreds, so I'm not going to go through them, but if anyone's interested, you can go and get a copy of the LDR. We're going to attach a copy of the LDR in the notes field, along with some other notes that we're going to put in the notes, which you can download as a pack, but also very relevant if you're a Mission Red Arrow partner and you want your points.
Okay. So actually, just to add to that though, so I mean, LDR, OMA, also, it's all very complicated stuff, that we are here, plus the quoting config team and the BDMs within the Oracle Business Scenario to actually help you with those requirements. Last thing we want to do is to have this documentation get away with an opportunity. So any opportunity itself, please get any of us involved. Within the pack, there is a full team guide of who's there to help you with.
And in terms of metric, I think that's probably enough. The next thing we need to talk about is term, but I think we'll leave that for another episode.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.